All right, so this is where we are right now. Just keep plugging away at it. I've been working my way up the shoe, and I have an end gone right in here, so I'm going to just cut in here, connect it there, and then get my wrong one. There we go. Get my soft selection on. Maybe make it smaller. Hold down Shift and relax this, just to spread things out. You got to be careful with relax. It excuse me. It can tend to soften certain details if you don't, if you're not careful. So I'm gonna turn off my soft selection and just make some adjustments. And I did have a pretty hard crash earlier that killed my recording, so I had to redo some stuff. So if the time lapse wasn't exactly the same as this final result here, that's why. But crashes come with working with 3D software, so if you work with this stuff long enough, you'll know. If a day goes by without a crash, that's a good day. Alright, so this is where I was. I'm going to now the issue, well, I guess the main issue that we're going to run into here is because this boot is a 3D scan of an actual boot that was actually worn. It has formed of the person's feet a certain way, and from me, you know, from him or her walking in the boot, whatever, you know, it's got folds and creases and all that in it. Now, if I go to just simply mirror this over to the other side, we're gonna get this weirdly identical boot with the exact same folds and creases in it. So that is something that I'm going to have to take into account later to try to make them less symmetrical. And I may do that in ZBrush. I don't have ZBrush on my home computer, on this computer here. So if I do any ZBrush work, I kind of have to do it off camera because I do not own ZBrush, and the computers in my computer lab, I do not have recording software on there, so it is what it is. I could potentially get ZBrush installed on my work laptop, but it runs at a lower resolution than this 1080p that I'm recording at here. So we may have lower resolution videos. I don't know. I'll come up with a solution to that. All right, so let's see about filling in this hole here. So what do we have here? We have, if I extrude this to here, need to cut in something here so that it matches up. And I guess we can do, and if you notice in the time lapse, this is something I do a lot. If I want to extrude all, say this is 4 edges here, if I want to extrude an entire 4 edge loops, if you hold down tab and middle mouse, it's gonna do the entire edge loop as far as it goes, and that's usually not what I want. So if I want to do just a specific range of edges, what I'll do is I'll extrude at either end of that range, and then now if I hold down tab and middle mouse, it's just gonna do those 4 in the middle, okay, which is what I wanted. So that's a little trick that I use for that. Oops. So if you just want to extrude a specific range in there, that's the way I do it. Now this here, I'm trying to think, do I need all of this going in there? And possibly, given that this is rounded, to get that nice round shape, I could probably use that. So I'm gonna cut in 1, 2, and 3, and then adjust. Quad Draw will do the best it can to match the surface, but sometimes things get kicked all over the place. So you just gotta fix them up when that happens. Okay. Now I was going to make all the individual panels of the shoe separately, but I decided to change that plan and connect everything just so that I have geometry that flows from one to the other. Now the downside of that is this has created a really dense section right here, and I'm not in love with this here, but that was a solution that I had in order to bring all this geometry from these sections into the shoe, into this panel. I decided to just turn it, instead of trying to have it all go through here, I decided to take some of that and turn it around this way and send it back up there. So it shouldn't be too bad, and if there's a little bumpiness in there, that's okay, because this is a shoe that has actually been worn. So there's a certain amount of bumpiness to be expected. And the thing I like about this 3D scan here, if I get out of quad draw, you can see that there's actual wear on the treads here, which is really nice. It's going to add to the realism of the shoe. Now, like I said before, this where the back panel is separating from the shoe, this I'm going to fix later. Right? I'm not going to do it now because quad draw likes this. It's going to try to stick to the reference mesh of the shoe. So I'll do that once I'm done with the quad draw stuff and I'm tweaking it by hand. Then I'll do all that stuff. So save that for later. Okay, now let's keep going here. I want to fill this gap. I probably want to run something through here, which will connect here. Maybe another one through here. Oh, there we go. And with quad draw, the thing you have to bear in mind is to every now and again delete history on the mesh. So I'll hit Q just to get out of quad draw, and because I'm in face mode, you end up in one of the sub object modes. I just hit F8 to get me on back into object mode, and then I hit Alt Shift D to delete my history. You can see my history is now gone, and then I can hit Y to get the previous tool and get back in my modeling kit and go from there. Okay, so this here we could fill in there. Now I don't think I'm loving how little geometry there is in here, so maybe I just shift some of this over this way, just so that I have it more, as even as I can get it. Don't want to bunch up geometry in one section and have it really be sparse in the next section. So we need to spread this out just a little bit better. So maybe there. Okay. Okay. Just as far as overall resolution, I think we're good. I don't think we need to go denser than this. It might seem a little on the heavy side, but I think it'll be okay. What are we at right now? We are at the moment. Let's isolate this. So this, why am I not getting here? There we go. Right now I'm at 2140 faces, which is nothing. I mean, that's absolutely nothing. I think when this is all said and done, might be a good 10,000. And again, it depends on things like laces. Those are gonna get kind of heavy, and the tread might get, it might be in the 20,000s. I don't know. We'll see. I think my whole character was in the 20,000s, but there's not as much tight detail on the human as there is in this shoe. So we'll see. If I have to optimize it later, maybe I will. But right now, poly counts are not really a concern so much, just because the computers today can handle it. I kind of wish I had a little bit more in here. Let's see what that looks like. See that? wrong place. Do it in the middle and one here. I really kind of like that. Problem is now I have put in a whole bunch of geometry in here. And it went around to that side, and this side it went down to here. So let me see. Again, I like to experiment with what I'm doing. So I'm just gonna try this out. If it doesn't work, and now that I say that, let me just undo back to before I cut that in there. Was that the, yep. And I'm just gonna save here. So if I decide I don't like adding in that extra geometry in there, then I can simply go back to my previous save. So one there, one there, one there. And then let's get our soft select, increase the size, hold down shift, and just smooth this out. Because now I'm getting a much nicer shape to this section here. Now in here, now I have to deal with all this extra. So let's see, spread this out a little bit and bring down the size of the soft selection here and spread it out in here, being very careful. You see that this little lip, that represents the thickness of each panel. I don't want to hit that with the smooth because it's going to mess it up a little bit. So make my soft selection a little small, and let's smooth this out here. Hit a little bit of that. So to push these back here, because I want to keep that a pretty tight crease there. And I'm not sure yet, but I think when I'm done with the quad draw, when I have to go in and do things by hand, I will actually tuck panels under each other and bevel in there just to keep that nice hard edge. We'll see. We'll see if it's necessary. If not, then I won't do it, but we'll see. Oops. Smooth. Just spread this stuff out. Okay, so it's just a lot of tweaking that you end up doing, but it'll make it look good in the end. Just going around the shoe. I'd like to keep the support edge kind of close to hold detail a little bit better right there. So just shifting this down. And again, see how this is nowhere near as dense as this. I really not a big fan of doing that, but in this case it might be okay. Alright, so I'm going to get my soft selection back here, and let's just spread some of this stuff out right in here. And let's shrink it down just for right in here. And we got to be careful again here. Okay, that relax tool is very nice. When in conjunction with the live mesh is a really nice feature, because it'll keep the shape of the mesh because it's following that underlying mesh, but it'll spread your geometry around a little bit just to even things out. So let's see, do I like this? I really don't like how heavy this is in here, but I think I'm gonna let it go. I think I'm gonna let that slide. So in here, I need to spread this out a little bit. Okay. So in here, and then of course the way that smoothing, the relax tool works is that it's going to relax the interior edges, but it won't touch the border, the points on the border edges. So, which is actually a nice feature. But what happens is that you have now to adjust some of these border edge verts. And sometimes I'll leave my soft selection on when I adjust stuff so that it does it with a fall off. So I'm not just shifting that one object. It's a good, easy way to spread things out over an area instead of just touching one thing. You could actually adjust an entire area. So something like that. Now, obviously, something to remember with making a shoe is that there's going to be a lot of bending right here in the ball of the foot. So I need to make sure that I have more than enough geometry to accommodate that. I think I do. So yeah, it'd probably be like right in here. Right in here is where that bending would be going on. So this here is still kind of bugging me. So let me try to do something with that. Turn off my soft selection. And let's bring this down just a little bit. And then, so I think I just need to shift over entire edge loops here. And the way that I like to do that is with the slide edge tool. And again, if you look in, within Quadro, if you look down here, keyboard mouse shortcuts, it'll tell you what you can do. And I don't believe there's any way to slide an entire edge loop. So the way that I do it, I just get out of Quadro and I make sure that my mesh is still alive. So when I select this edge loop, and actually, just to make it easier to see, I'm going to isolate this mesh. Now it's still going to be constrained to that live mesh. So just because I don't see it doesn't mean it's not doing it, working on it. And if I want to try to straighten this out, if I scale it kind of straight, maybe not too much, it's still going to be constrained to the underlying mesh. And then I can go in and get my slide edge tool and I can slide it along there. Okay, same with this one. Maybe I put a little bit less bend in it there. Okay, and then now I've created room to put in, let's put in 2, 1 and 2. And let's try to even those out a little bit. So maybe 1 here, 1 here. So now I've given myself a little bit more geometry. And let's unisolate that boot in here to allow for that bending at the toe, at the ball. So let's see. Let's just continue to tweak this. And let's put another one right in here. Okay, and then get my soft select, hold down shift, and again let's start to spread this out. Now I should be getting a much nicer, much more even mesh. Okay, I really like this relax tool. It does such a great job of spreading things out. Makes less work for you to push and pull points because it's just gonna do it for you while keeping everything tight on the mesh below. There we go, look at that. So that works pretty well. And again, because the border points don't move, I can just adjust. So now I have geometry for bending. I should be able to get pretty decent bending in there. Maybe let's bring this back just a little bit. And let's try to line things up nicely. Okay, so there's still going to be some pushing and pulling of points. course, that's kind of unavoidable if you're working in polygons. But the quad draw does speed things up. Okay, so just as far as working off a 3D mesh, some people that think that working off, I should say, working off a 3D scanned mesh or a ZBrush model. This works if you do a lot of ZBrush work. You can do your concept in ZBrush, flesh it out, and then bring it into quad draw to retopology it. Now ZBrush has its own retopology tools. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not really, I mean, I use ZBrush, but I'm not a ZBrush expert. I'm not much of a sculptor, although I would like to improve on that. But I use it mainly for texture work, and it works really well for that. But it does have its own retopology tools. In regards to using a 3D mesh as your reference, some people think of that as cheating, which just it's kind of crazy to me. They feel like if you didn't model everything by hand, traditionally, that you're somehow cheating by using a 3D scan, and that to me is kind of it's crazy. I mean, it's perfectly acceptable to get photographs to bring into Maya and use as your reference on an image plane, right? And then trace off of those, and that's just two-dimensional reference. So using a 3D scan is just three-dimensional reference, right? You're just bringing it in there and you're using it to create your animatable object, because you can't animate the 3D scan. It's usually, the geometry is usually pretty bad. If you look at this, I mean, you're never going to do anything with this. It's way too dense. I mean, there's 1.8 million polygons in this. There's no way to get it looking good. So it still requires that you as the artist have the skills to be able to utilize this, right? So you need to know how to set up your edge loops, because there's no, it's not just easy, oh, it's all done for me. No, you still have to sit there and model everything out and make it so it's usable for animation, and that takes some skill to do. So it really is just the same as using a photograph for reference. It's just that you have much better reference. You have three-dimensional reference, which allows you to even capture the shape even better. Okay, plus it speeds up the workflow. If I had to sit here and model this off photographs, it would take me twice as long, 3 times as long, So definitely don't feel bad about it, especially if you're doing super realistic stuff where, some decent accuracy is required. Then for me, this method is fantastic, right? I'm not doing any cartoony stuff. I don't really like doing cartoony stuff. I did it for 10 years at a studio, and I prefer the more real looking stuff. So don't be afraid to go online. There's 3D scans everywhere, and then there's also photogrammetry, which is something that I want to get into. I want to try to do that. That way you can pretty much scan your own things using a camera by taking a bunch of photos from every angle, pretty much as you can, and then plugging that into the software, and it'll make you a 3D object with textures. So if you have something that you physically own or have, you can basically 3D scan that. It's like a poor man's 3D scan, but it works great. I've seen a lot of people have done some amazing stuff with photogrammetry, and it's just one of those things that I want to get into, so I could, if I needed, I have boots that I could have used, that I've worn that look worn. I could have totally done that, but I haven't had the time to get into it, and I really have to keep moving on this thing, so I didn't do it. But it's something that I would definitely consider as I go on, to be able to get real life objects and use them. The disadvantage of me buying this file and downloading is that anybody can do the same thing, and I might see this boot in somebody else's thing, which I guess is not a huge deal. But it is a real boot, so even if I did own this boot myself, the difference would have been that it would have worn differently than this one. So, there's that. So it's something to look into if you're into this type of stuff. Photogrammetry is pretty interesting. It allows you to do all this cool stuff by just having a basic camera, just a standard camera, and going around the object, taking pictures from every angle, and the software is smart enough to be able to reconstruct that object just by using overlapping parts of images, so that it can figure out the three dimensions of the object. Okay, so I'm gonna cut in here. I decided to come back here to finish this hole. What you'll notice with me is that I jump around, man. I if something starts to be boring for me on one side, I'll go somewhere else and work on that. It just keeps me from getting bored with an area, because I do that a lot. I think I have some kind of ADD. So it helps for me to move around with what I'm working on. So I'm back here. I'll probably jump to somewhere else soon. And it doesn't matter. You do what you got to do. You work the way that you want to work, so you can get it done as quickly as possible. And that's kind of the way I look at it. So let me just cut straight to here. Now we're going to run into triangle here, but honestly I'm not worried about it, because it's a small triangle right in here. I don't think it's going to cause too much trouble. So I'm going to fill that in. And now I need to deal with this, and the easy way to do this is just get the multi-cut, and let's cut through here. I'm going to cut, turn around, and go back there, and then connect these corners and this one there. Okay, so now I've got all quads in there, and then I can, back in quad draw, I can connect like that. Alright, so that's sealed up in there. Again, I think the geometry is going to work fine. And then I'm going to do the same for this side. Okay, so we're getting there. Never really realize how complex an object is until you start to model it. It's a pretty complex item, this shoe. Oh, I think I forgot to relax some stuff in here. So let's turn on our soft select and start relaxing in here. And wrong one. Let's turn off our soft select and then bring some of this stuff back here. Okay. Okay. So something like that. And you can sit here and tweak forever, so you got to be able to catch yourself and just force yourself to move on sometimes. And I will admit that I do have trouble sometimes doing that, but no biggie. All right, so here we go. The next thing I want to do is start to maybe lay in some of these I don't know what you call them, the loopholes or whatever, the metal rings that go in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out of quad draw, I'm going to make a new torus. And I'm going to, oh, you know what? I need to turn off my live surface, otherwise it's going to try to snap there. And I'm just going to snap it to the, just point snap it to the mesh there. Now, obviously, I'm not going to use this much geometry in there. And I'm going to cut this in half. So subdivisions on the axis, let's go down to 8. About 12. Now, you know, let's go down to 8 just because it is such a small thing and I don't want to waste geometry on it. And then subdivisions height, knowing that we're going to probably chop it, at least this bottom half off of it. That's 88 polygons as is before I cut off some polygons, so that's not bad. Let's go down to 10. And we're down to 80 polygons. If I cut it exactly in half, that'll be only 40, but I think I might go in an extra edge loop down. I just don't want to use more than I need. Let's go to 8. 8 and 8. 64. Yeah, you know what? I think this will be good as far as resolution. And then I'm just going to try to position it. And I need to match the dimensions of that grommet in there. So let's do a 0.6. No, let's go the other way. 0.4 section radius. Because we want that center hole to be more or less the same size as what's in the reference. So let's go 0.35. Yeah, I think that'll be good right there. Okay, I'm going to isolate it. Now I can delete that, which leaves me with 40 vertices. Although I might just extrude this so that it just sinks into the mesh there. Okay, see what that looks like. Smooth. That smooths out pretty well. At 2 iterations, that's at 1. I think that'll be fine. So at 2 iterations, it goes up to 192 faces. I'm sorry, that's 1 iteration. At 2 iterations, it goes up to 738. So I'll probably smooth it to 1. Usually when I model with the intention to smooth only to 1 iteration of smooth. So I usually try to put enough detail in there to where I only need to do 1. Because remember, every time you hit a smooth on something, for each iteration of smooth, you're multiplying the polygons by 4. Okay, so I try to model to where I only need to smooth it once. Because if I have to smooth it twice, technically, from the original, I'm multiplying the number of polygons times 16. So that tends to be a lot. So this should be good. Okay, so that's going to go there, more or less, something like that. Don't worry about getting it perfect. And now this is where it might be a good idea to think about doing UVs on this. And planar map usually works. Now let's try to align this. It doesn't have to be perfect. Where am I? There they are. I don't like how the UV tools are not automatically docked. Once you have it kind of close, you can simply unfold, and it should unfold that for you. If we look at our UVs, let's go in object mode here, and you know what? I gotta remember to save, because I did have that hard crash that like just killed everything, so I had a lot of work to redo. All right, let's isolate this and just look at our UVs. I think that will be fine. Again, it's probably just gonna be a brass shader with some procedural noise in there to just tarnish it a little bit. and this should be fine. Okay, so unsmooth that, and then I'm gonna turn this off. Let's get our torus here, just make it small. This is not gonna be the final UVs, but I just wanted to lay out UVs and delete history. So now I can duplicate this and put it here, and again just try to rotate it into place.